Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for attending today's workshop. I'm Juliana and I will be the moderator for this session. We'll also be having Lauren assisting with technical issues. Before we jump in, there are a few housekeeping items to discuss. If you have any questions for the presenters, please ensure that you're using the chat feature on the bottom bar of your Zoom application. Our techie volunteer, Lauren, will be helping to monitor our chat as we go along with our session today. This event will be recorded, but attendee information will be kept confidential. The first half of today's webinar will cover an overview of the DAT itself, and then you'll get a chance to hear from a student panel on their personal experiences with the test. So I'm happy to introduce to you our presenter for today's DAT strategy session. Ms. Karen Herndon is a representative of the Princeton Review. So she'll be covering the content of the test, walk through some sample questions, and share some proven test taking strategies. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Karen.
Thank you, Juliana, for such a nice, warm welcome. Hi, everyone. As Juliana mentioned, my name is Karen Herndon. I work for the Princeton Review, and today I'm here to talk to you about the DAT. So let me open my slideshow and just minimize these things, put it full screen. Alrighty. So by the way, before we get started, I just wanted to mention that I'll be sending everyone here a copy of the slides. So no need to, take notes. Obviously, you're more than welcome to take notes, but you will be receiving a copy of the slides. So if you missed something or wanted to look at something more closely, you'll have a chance to in your own time. So we have a lot of great information to discuss today, and here's a quick breakdown of what to expect. So we'll try to fit as much as we can within the 30 minutes. So first we'll dissect the actual test by going over the content, format, and scoring of the DAT. And then we'll go over how to maximize your performance on the DAT with tips and strategies. And then we'll discuss how we can help on your dental school journey. Or at least we'll try to get through as much of that as possible. So first, what is the DAT? So it stands for the Dental Admissions Test. It's a standardized test required for admission to dental school. It is created by the ADA, which stands for the American Dental Association, and it's administered at Prometric testing centers. So they have these very clinical looking testing centers that are pretty much, kind of like a chain, and they look the same across the board. So we'll get into what to expect on test day soon. But if you want more information on the DAT beyond this presentation, or if you're planning to register for the DAT, or you need a requirements checklist, definitely be sure to go to ada.org, ada.org. To find more information, because they are the end all and be all final word for all things DAT. The American Dental Association is the association that creates the DAT. So definitely check that website out, especially, you will have to use that website when you register for the exam. Okay, so this map just shows you all of the dental schools in the United States and Canada. It's a visual representation. And so it's interesting to point out that, there are a lot on the coasts. So quite a few in California and quite a few concentrated on the East Coast. And let's talk about DAT facts. So like I said, it's administered at Prometric test centers in the US, and there are a limited number of test centers and seats, therefore. So it's highly recommended that you register for the test as early as possible. The fee for the DAT is $4.95. Last I checked, they tend to increase the score every year, but I did this presentation about a couple months ago, and so that is the most up-to-date as far as that. But again, maybe they've raised it again. Check the ADA website just in case. But last time I checked, it's $4.95. You have to, the most you can take the DAT is 3 times in a year. You have to wait 90 days in between each test, but hopefully you only need to take it once. And definitely, as I said, things change and get updated, especially these days because of the pandemic. So definitely make sure to check the website, ada.org, for the most up-to-date COVID precautions and testing locations and things like that. So this is a schedule of the official DAT test day. All in all, it's about a 5-hour and 15-minute long exam. You do get a scheduled break that is optional, but definitely encouraged to take those 30 minutes to regroup and focus, because it is such a long day, right? So you want to take as much time as you can to, eat or just regroup. So here is the breakdown of each of the sections of the exam. Each of the sections in the DAT is scored from 1 to 30. But remember that you'll actually receive 6 sub-scores from 1 to 30, because the natural sciences, this first section, will break out into separate scores: biology, gen chem, and OChem scores. And then you'll also receive an average academic score, which is an average of all of these sections except for the PAT, the Perceptual Ability Test. And then you'll also receive an overall score, which is an average of all the sections. Oops, let me go back. So each of these you'll be scored on a scale from 1 to 30. And the median point for the distribution of scores is 15, which kind of makes sense. If it's 1 to 30, 15 is right in the middle, just like an average bell curve. So yeah, there are no guessing penalties on the exam, and you'll receive your scores within 3 to 4 weeks after the test, but you'll receive an unofficial score available at the end of the test, which is kind of like a predictor of what your official final score will be. So what is a good score? A very common question. And the answer to that question is that a good DAT score is a score that gets you into dental school. And yeah, maybe that's not a particularly satisfying answer. So as a general rule of thumb, you should be aiming for a score of 20 and above on each section, or a 19 to 20 for a middle tier school. So ultimately, it's up to you to do your research on the dental schools that you're applying to, what their average accepted scores are, and kind of base your study plan and your goal scores around that. But as I mentioned, a score that's considered good, would be maybe a 20 or above, because that's what's most likely the score that's going to get you into dental school. So we included these, I know these are all California schools, but I just wanted to show you just an example of how different the timelines and entering classes and just general information about each of these schools can be. So we wanted to do an application acceptance timetable to compare and contrast. So for example, if you're looking at USC, Loma Linda, and UCLA. The entering class at USC and UCLA start in fall, whereas Loma Linda starts a little bit earlier in late August. The earliest application filling date is early June across the board, but the latest application filing date is you have quite a bit more time for USC. It's February 1st, whereas Loma Linda, the latest application filing is November 1st, and then UCLA is somewhere in between. And then earliest date of acceptance across the board is December 1st. So I just want to paint a picture of how different every school is, and how it's so important for you to do your research in terms of application deadlines, and even just comparing the demographics of each school is quite interesting, right? So at USC, it has a very high number of applicants in total compared to other schools in LA. Let's see, what else is significant here? Oh, the entering class is bigger at USC though, whereas at Loma Linda and UCLA, it's quite a small entering class. So it's a big filter that you have to go through. Almost 1,300 students apply, but only 52 students will get in. And then here, this one is very interesting. The average DAT scores for first year, first time enrollees. So as you can see, and this is referring back to those different scores that we talked about, the academic average, which is the average of all the sections of the test besides perceptual ability. Then they have just a perceptual ability and then your total science score, right? This is kind of what the schools, the admissions officers look for or look at when they're looking at your application. And so as you can see, UCLA's average scores are very high. So again, just do your research because you want to make sure that the schools you're applying to are a good mix of reach schools, safe schools, and maybe schools, basically. Okay, and then here's the average score, GPAs. One second, okay. And yeah, okay, so here's a little new sample on how to apply to a DDS program. First, you want to take the DAT no later than February 1st of the year in which you're applying for acceptance. And just FYI, your scores can't be older than 3 years old. So this is just an example of one school's policies. Some schools might be different. But at this school, they require 2 letters of rec from lecture-based science professor in bio, chemistry, or physics, and 1 letter of rec from a dentist. And again, this is not across the board for all schools. So I'm just kind of stressing the importance of making sure you know what the requirements are for every school that you apply to. And so it might serve you well to create a spreadsheet with comparing and contrasting requirements and deadlines for all the schools that you're applying to. You might want to put different tabs or different columns just to compare them and make sure that you're on the right timeline. But for example, required prereqs for this school are 1 full year of general bio and physics, including the lab, Gen Chem, OChem, English, and philosophy, history, or fine arts. But this is pretty standard, I would say. You know, most schools are not going to vary much from these requirements. And again, you know, going back to that example that we had of USC, Loma Linda, and UCLA, it's recommended that you take anatomy, but it's not required. But for biochem at USC, it's recommended but not required. But then at Loma Linda and UCLA, it is required. So it's important to think about these things as you're planning your undergraduate careers and what classes you're taking and when. So on the actual exam, there are tools on the screen that allow you, and we'll show examples of this in a couple slides, but there's a scroll bar, there's navigation buttons, you can mark questions that you didn't finish or want to review later. There's a calculator that you can use on screen, but it's pretty simple. They'll give you a warning when time is about to expire. And there's timer and what question number at the top left of your screen, but let's just get to, I think, and if later on in this slideshow, you'll see an example of what it actually looks like. But before we get there, let's talk about the different sections of the exam. So in more detail, right? So there is the natural sciences section. You have 90 minutes for this section and 100 questions. So that's, about less than a minute, about a minute per question. The questions kind of break up into 40 questions bio, 30 questions Gen Chem, 30 questions OChem. And I don't know if any of you might be on the fence about MCAT or DAT, but if you know anything about the MCAT, you know that the entire exam pretty much is based on passages. So the great thing about the DAT is that unlike the MCAT, the questions are not based on passages. So the format of this section will feel a lot more similar to tests that you have taken in the past. They're just multiple choice questions. And then every question has 5 answer choices. And there is no guessing penalty on the DAT. So definitely be sure to answer every single question and leave no questions blank. So within those topics of bio, Gen Chem, and OChem, these are the topics that are covered, and you can find this information on ADA's website as well. So make sure you have a firm grasp on these topics for bio, and likewise for chemistry, these are the topics that will be tested. So they make it very transparent for you by providing this information of exactly what's going to be tested, which is great news because then you can prepare accordingly. And then with OChem, here are the various topics that are tested as well. So we'll go through some sample questions. Yeah, we're doing pretty good on time. So, you know, full disclosure, I am not a DAT instructor. So I'm just going to give you some time to look at this question and, you know, test yourself. And then we'll go over the answer. But, you know, I'll read you why the answer is correct. But once again, just I am not a DAT instructor, simply Princeton Review representative. So feel free to take a look at this, maybe test yourself. I'll give you about 15 more seconds. Okay, so the answer to this question is B. So here's the reason why. The description fits the phylum Arthropoda. Members of the phylum Onychophora possess soft bodies, etc., etc. I actually was a pre-med, and I went to UH myself when I was a bio major, but you know, it's been a long time. But you know, this is great, you know, sample question because you can see exactly what the format is for a bio question, and knowing that, you know, you will be tested on phylum, right? And having a firm grasp on a different phylum is important. So there's that. And actually, I'm just going to skip through these because I will be giving you a copy of these slides. So therefore, you can test yourself and use these as, you know, free sample questions to use in your DAT prep. But here's a sample Gen Chem question with the answer. Boyle's Law, oh my gosh, it's been a long time, but wow, I don't miss chemistry. And then here's another sample Gen Chem question. Okay, one second. My dog is barking. 1 second. The PAT, okay, so sorry about that. The Perceptual Ability Test is a section that tests your visualization skills using 3D objects, 2D objects, and angles. Here are the various topics: apertures, view recognition, et cetera, et cetera. And so one thing that's interesting about pre-dental students and the DAT in general, especially the perceptual ability, is that you know, for example, dental schools really look highly upon, or they like to see in their when they're reviewing applications, students who have demonstrated in their coursework or extracurriculars that they have a firm grasp on perceptual ability. So meaning, you know, maybe you've taken guitar lessons or you play piano or an instrument. You're good with your hands, right? Because that's what good dentists are. They need to, or if you're a sculptor or do art in any way. As you can see here, angle discrimination, paper folding, cube counting, 3D form development, these are actually tested on the DAT. And so having experience and backgrounds like that can really help you. So I just find that really fascinating about pre-dental students. So once again, in an effort to get through these next few slides in the remaining, 8 minutes that we have left, I'm just going to leave this up to you to look over in your own time, but there's plenty of sample questions on the PAT section of the exam. So these are different types of, so as you saw in here, apertures, view recognition, we have a sample question for each of these topics, right? So this is a sample aperture question. You will see, once you take a practice DAT or the official DAT, you'll notice that they will have keyhole type questions. So this is literally a type of question. There will be many variations of this. Then there's view recognition. They'll present you with 2 different views of an object, and your goal will be to envision the third view. So for example, here, they present you with 2 different views, and then they ask you what the top view is. So in this case, B is the correct answer. And then angle discrimination. So I was corrected recently that in the past, actually, you could use a piece of paper to measure these because this looks really difficult to discern between 2 and 3. And in the past, you actually could use a piece of paper to discern them, but now they've let go of that. They're become more strict, I guess you could say. And so now you actually have to visually just use your eyes to try to discriminate between these 2 angles. And oh, where was the answer to that one? Shoot. Okay, I'll make sure that when I provide you with the slides, I'll provide you with the answer as well. So we'll get that fixed later. Then there's paper folding questions. So if you're good at origami, maybe this could help you with questions like this. There's cube counting. So for example, these questions will present you with a diagram of several cubes that have been cemented together, and then they've been painted on all sides except for the bottom sides. And the task is to determine how many cubes have 1 side painted, 2 sides painted, etc. So here, all these cubes are supposed to be cemented together, and then they want to know, they'll ask you a question specifically related to that, but there will be variations of this. So in this example, how many cubes have one of their exposed sides painted? So yeah, it's definitely a different skill, maybe not a skill that you've learned in your undergraduate courses, but something that you can definitely learn as you study for the DAT. So B is the correct answer here. And see, they'll have more questions. How many have 2 of their exposed sides, right? Etc. 3D form development, here's another example. And lastly, in our last 5 minutes, we'll quickly just talk about reading comprehension, which I'm sure you are used to from other standardized tests that you've taken in the past. You have an hour to answer 50 questions, and it's about 20 minutes per passage. So these questions will ask you about various topics from the passage, may ask you to determine things like whether or not a statement is true or false, based on the passage, or if the author of the passage would agree with a particular statement. And every standardized test includes some form of reading comprehension. So the DAT is no different. The LSAT, the MCAT, the GMAT, GRE, they all have these types of questions. So the passages are usually science related, but they can also come from a wide range of different topics. So, to succeed on this section of the exam, you definitely don't need to read each passage word for word. It's better to practice skimming through these sections and annotating important information in the margins so you can refer back to it quickly. And there are underlining tools within the DAT that you can use to help you refer back to the passage so that you can quickly answer questions. So one of the greatest ways that you can prepare for a section like this, aside from, studying typical DAT prep books and things like that and doing practice problems, is to actually spend some time reading articles of similar length in magazines or journals, or even on your phone, but taking notes on the side, and just practice your annotating and highlighting skills, and just try to test yourself in your regular life. It might seem tedious or really basic, but it actually is a really good way to improve your reading comprehension score on the DAT. And it's just read, read, and practice, practice, practice. So here's some sample reading comp questions. As you can see, this is a science-based question, but you don't necessarily need to know that, know what, you don't need to know the answer to this coming in. All the information is provided to you within the passage, but so this section of the exam is just testing your comprehension, right? And then lastly, the quant section is algebra, data analysis, interpretation, sufficiency, quant comparison, and applied math. So you will have 45 minutes to answer 40 questions. So that's about a minute per question. And you will be provided with a basic 4-function calculator that's available on your screen. Yeah, the calculator will only be available for this section only. So there you have it. We've gone through every section of the DAT. That's the DAT in a nutshell. Here are some sample quant questions that you can work through on your own. Quick word on strategy. I know we don't have a lot of time, but just wanted to mention that pacing is super important. Don't rush through the questions, even though, timing can be difficult when you have so many questions to answer in a limited amount of time. So slow down to increase your score, but at the same time, I think one of the best ways that you can work on pacing is taking as many practice tests as possible. Don't be afraid to skip around within this section. For example, if you're in a reading comprehension section and you see a passage that just looks so overwhelming, or just, you don't want to deal with it right then, you can move around, go to the next passage and read something that's more appealing to you, because the goal is to pick up as many points as you can. So you are not limited to take the test in the order of the questions presented to you. You're more than welcome to skip around. Process of elimination is what POE stands for. So definitely this is such a key strategy for any standardized test. You want to eliminate wrong answers to better your odds. And remember that there's no guessing penalty, so never leave a blank answer. And keep your scratch paper organized. So we have a lot of free resources on our website. I know this says pre-med GPA booster, but it's relevant to DAT as well. I'll send you links to all of these in the follow-up email along with the slides so that you can utilize these free resources. And then, we have a lot of resources. I'm just going to skip through this, but I'll send it in the email, just so that you know. So basically what these slides are is what we call our med school management tool. But once again, you can use this for your dental school application. And this is totally free. We're just showing you what it looks like on our website, because as you're applying to dental school, they're going to ask you to list all of your experiences and activities from your undergraduate career. And you don't want to wait to compile that list until the very last minute. You should be compiling the list all along in your undergraduate career, so that when it comes time to apply to dental school, all you have to do is copy and paste. And that way also, even if you're a freshman, you can use this type of management tool of your activities and experiences to give you ideas of what opportunities you should be looking for in your summers or when you have free time. If you're a sophomore, you can use it to see, how far along you are. If you're a junior and you're planning to apply to dental school that year, you can use it to be kind of like a supplement to when you're asking for letters of rec, for example. This is an example of someone who filled it in and printed it out. So you can print this out and then show this to your recommenders, so that, they might know you in the classroom setting, but they don't know that, for example, you shadowed Dr. John Doe, for 50 hours. Sorry about the dog. Okay, and I got through it. Woohoo! So if you have any questions, that is my email address. And that is all. I'm going to stop presenting now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing a little bit about the DAT and about Princeton's resources. I'm sure everyone learned a lot too. So to continue our learning, we would like to begin our question and answer session with our wonderful panelists who are joining us today. So we have three pre-dental students with us, Juliana, Alyssa, and Vanessa. And so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat or to use the question and answer feature on your toolbar. But while everybody's thinking of their questions, I'm just gonna kick it off and ask you guys to introduce yourselves, like your name, your year, major, and then your current position in your application timeline, if you guys don't mind.
Okay, I will go. So I'm Juliana. I'm a senior in biology, and right now I'm currently in the process of applying to dental schools.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm also a senior majoring in biology, and I'm also in the process of applying to dental school.
Hi, my name is Alyssa. I'm also a senior majoring in biology, and I am also in the process of applying for dental school.
Awesome, thank you guys, and thank you, Karen, for coming.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we do, or I guess one question that I'm sure everybody's curious about is how long did you take to study for the DAT? And then what preparatory materials did you guys use or find the most helpful?
Okay, so I studied for around 3.5 months during the summer after my sophomore year. I used a good amount of resources just because I had a scholarship, and so I had the freedom to kind of buy more resources. But I used DAT Bootcamp, DAT Destroyer, and the Math Destroyer. And then on the side, I used PT Booster and DAT Q-Ball, but my main one was DAT Bootcamp and Destroyer.
So I studied for the DAT for about 4 months. I had the 3-month subscription, but I asked them to extend it for another 3 weeks because I postponed my exam for 3 weeks. But I mainly used DAT Bootcamp. Yeah, I only used DAT Bootcamp. I only found out about DAT Destroyer a week before my exam, so I figured I don't know. Couldn't really benefit much from it. And what else are we supposed to answer?
I think that was it.
That's good. Perfect.
Okay, for me, it was kind of hard because I think I started a little bit of studying, and then my semester ended up being like too hard, so I kind of like delayed it, and then I was like, I'll do it next semester. So I was kind of like studying like in between my classes the following semester, and then I still felt like that wasn't that good enough. So I think I spent 2 months in the summer like fully dedicating my time. During the semester, it was probably like half of my time, so it wasn't like, maybe I would say like around like 4 months too. And I used DAT Bootcamp, DAT Booster, DAT Destroyer. I think that's it. And then I found DAT Booster was really helpful for the bio section. There's a lot of similar questions, and I felt like it was kind of harder, so it kind of prepared you a little bit more. DAT Bootcamp was still good for like Gen Chem, OChem, and what else is there? OQR. Yeah.
Yeah, so like that booster did come out a little bit later, I think. Like I didn't have it. What is it? They just released it when I was studying for the DAT, and so like, I didn't even get to use it. But I think let's use DAT Bootcamp, and then between like booster and bootcamp, Vanessa, if you had to stick to one, would you say?
If I didn't have that much money, I would probably do booster. I felt like it was worth it because it's cheaper. I think it's like $200 or $300 cheaper, and then it like prepares you pretty well. It has a lot of good resources, and yeah, the bio section I had like maybe like at least like 8 or more questions that were like the same from booster.
Yeah.
So it's really good.
Yeah, I've also heard good things about the booster. And I guess for everyone who's like just attending, there are different types of programs that you or resources you can look into. And so like the Princeton Review and I think like Kaplan, those types of companies are going to give you courses where someone might be teaching you like from an actual classroom or through like virtual lectures. And it's a set schedule. They're setting the schedule for you. I think us three, we all stuck to the specific resources where you kind of self-study, right? Because so like bootcamp and booster, what they provide videos for you, and you kind of learn through their videos or their textbooks, I guess, or materials, and then they have practice problems, but you can go at your own pace, which I personally liked, but I know other people sometimes they need structure, and so they go to other types of, you know, like Kaplan and Princeton, but they do cost more. It's like I think $1,000 or more for that, and then I think we paid maybe like, was it $500 for boot camp? Yeah, so it still costs a lot, but you know, it's on the cheaper side for a quality resource, I would say. Yeah.
If you are looking to save money, on the DAT Bootcamp page, there's a Facebook page where everybody kind of communicates with each other. People post questions and answers. A lot of people, oftentimes you can ask fellow students if you can like borrow their account or something. Not necessarily, like if your account expires and you don't want to renew it, you only have a couple weeks left, you can ask to borrow theirs, or if they're done using it, they'll just give you their password. And if you don't want to pay for booster, yeah, the worst they'll say is no. A really good support group.
Yeah, there is the Facebook group is good to join, in my opinion. People like post their breakdowns too, and so basically like everything we're talking about, they'll like post their own breakdown on the Facebook group. But like finances wise, I also applied to the ASUH Grad Test Prep Award. If you're a student of UH Manoa, that is available every semester. I think they provide up to $1,000, but sometimes they don't supply the full fund. And so that's how I was able to use a lot of resources, because they covered my test fee and the cost for boot camp. And so I was able to like spend the money on other resources because that scholarships covered a lot of stuff. But yeah. Okay.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds like a lot of you guys use like similar materials and kind of like the self-study method, self-pacing yourself. I guess with that being said, how did you guys keep yourself motivated and on track and not fall behind? Or like any tips you guys can share about that?
Vanessa, you wanna go?
Yeah, it was rough for me. There's definitely a lot of times where I felt like giving up, but the Facebook page is really helpful. I think there's people on there that like asked if you want to join study groups, kind of motivate each other. I didn't really do that, but I kind of had one of my friends who was, I think she's pre-med, she was kind of like helping me or like motivating me, and I think I like took like a short break to like relax, and that kind of helped me a little. And then I did everything on like Google Calendar. I had like each like subject kind of like set out of my day, like what I'm gonna do in the morning. So I kind of had like bio maybe in the morning, and then Gen Chem, and then Google Calendar was really helpful for organizing. And I kind of did like how many hours I was gonna spend on that. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also use Google Calendar. So like at the beginning of each week, I would kind of set out my schedule for the week and what I wanted to accomplish in terms of like how many hours or what types of, you know, this many practice problems or these subjects, these chapters of each topic. And so that really helped me to set goals along the way. And I also I had a study partner. She was pre-med, so she was studying for the MCAT at the same time. And I think it really helps because it's someone to hold you accountable and say like, okay, we are going to go to study at the library today. Instead, like you might end up, you know, staying at home and not actually studying. And so that was really helpful, especially because I studied during the summer. You really have to be disciplined with your time. I think because you're kind of there's just a lot of freedom to do other things, I guess. And so, yeah, I thought that finding a study partner was really, really helpful.
When I started during the school year, so I had a lot of classes. I thought I could handle it. There were some points where I was falling behind because I had exams to study for and assignments to do, and that's why I postponed my exam for 3 weeks. I was about to take it like right after finals, but I realized that was a bad idea, very bad idea. But I would always write down everything I needed to do, or there's a calendar on DAT Bootcamp which shows you what you should be achieving by each day that you're studying. So I would follow that according to my schedule, how much time I had to either complete it, or if I had leftover, I could do more. Most of the time, I didn't have leftover time. I do prioritize having a good night's rest. So you can't go through the whole study schedule. It's very hard to go through the whole planned day while you're in school, and it takes a lot of dedication. So say if you're studying during school, 3 months probably won't cut it unless you have a lot of free time on your hands, but you have to like volunteer and you have to do good in school and other extracurricular activities. I did have some study buddies. We would just go to school and study together, but they wouldn't study every single day that like I would, because you have to do homework and studying for the DAT. But then I took 3 weeks, or like 3 weeks in winter break, 2.5 weeks, to really sit down and study all day, every day for 8 or 9 hours a day, because my test was coming up. I guess the anxiety will really get to you that your test is coming up, so you really study. But during the school year, it's kind of hard. Yeah, we've all had those moments, and it's okay.
Yes, for sure. I feel like everybody or people here, if they're studying now, they'll understand what you mean, Alyssa. Okay, I know Karen had talked a little bit about the different sections on the DAT. I guess for each of you guys, which did you feel was the most difficult, and how did you give that section a little extra attention compared to all of the others?
So one of the tips that I do have, and it's related to this, is to take a diagnostic test before you start studying. I personally did this, and I found it, I did this before I started like any type of studying. And so like the day after my finals, like the beginning of the summer, I took a diagnostic test because like Princeton, Karen mentioned that they have a free test available. Kaplan also has like a free test available, and they'll give you your score after that. And I don't think like they might not be full length, but that's not really necessary. But basically taking the diagnostic test is just like you take a practice test and see what your scores are just based off of whatever knowledge you have. So I did that, and I knew that my weakest ones were math and PAT, I think. Biology was also low. And so like I did the diagnostics very first day of studying, and so my scores were very, very low. Like, yeah, they're very low. And so I think it gave me a good idea of what weaknesses I had. And it was true, like when I started studying, I really struggled with math. For some reason, something about the QR in the DAT is different from like past algebra classes or even just regular statistics, in my opinion. And so, yeah, doing a diagnostic test to like even understand what your weaknesses is really helpful, because I allocated more time for those subjects when I was studying. So those subjects I did every single day when I was studying. And the way that I kind of tackled it is just I did a bunch of practice problems, which I think for math and for PAT is kind of the main way around it, is just to get a bunch of practice in. And so, yeah, that's it's not the most helpful, but it's honestly like kind of the main way around it, is just exposing yourself to the different types of problems and understanding how to approach them by doing practice problems. Yeah.
For me, I think mine was Gen Chem, because since I was a junior, it's kind of been a while since I took Gen Chem, so that was kind of hard for me to, I had to kind of like restudy it, and I didn't know much on that material. So I kind of spent extra time doing Gen Chem and bio too. Bio is kind of like, it's very broad. So I spent a lot of, or most of my time doing bio and Gen Chem. And then, yeah, it's just doing a lot of practice problems helped. Like Gen Chem, I would watch a lot of videos because I didn't really know how to do it first. So I would watch videos first, and then I would do the practice problems, and then just keep working on whatever I was like confused on. And that's kind of how I did it.
My difficult sections were bio. One, because there's certain topics on there that I didn't take or learn yet, say like anatomy, and I think one other, like there's also like a little bit of genetics on there. It's not super challenging or anything. It's obviously something that you can learn. Just not being exposed to those topics made it difficult for me. I had to learn everything from the base in those sections. Especially bio being really broad, it's one of the hardest sections because you have to know so many different things that can test you on like whatever they want to. And I think the other section for me that was challenging was probably OChem. It was challenging, but then after doing so much repetition and studying, I did okay. I remember taking my practice exams for OChem, and it would say like less than 14, and I'd be like really bummed out. I just kept getting less than 14, so I really told myself I have to study really hard, and I did good.
Yeah, and I will say like something for bio. I think me and Alyssa talked, or I think we mentioned this before in like a past meeting, but flashcards really help in my opinion, especially for bio, because like she said, there's so much to know, and they really squeeze it in. Like like bio 172 at UH Manila teaches you like all the plants and animals. You do have to know that for the exam, because you don't know like I think Karen showed an example question like with the arthropoda or something. Like you have to remember that kind of stuff, and it's kind of it is a hassle sometimes because it's not super relevant to dentistry in my opinion, but flashcards really help with that. And then for like all the anatomy and physiology, flashcards helped me. So I used Anki because it used like spaced repetition, and so it helps you remember things longer for a long amount of time. I know people have Quizlet, and like if you do day 2 boot camp, they have set flashcard decks for you to use already, where you don't have to spend time making it. But yeah, I know someone asked about like the classes that helped for the DT in upper division. So they asked, do you think any of the upper division biology or science classes really help for the DT? And I think this is really good for like Vanessa and Alyssa, because I know you guys took it sometime in like your junior year, so you had some of those classes to go based off of. Do you think it was helpful? Or because I guess with this, like you get more of the upper division classes, but it's also more time from those intro courses, like Vanessa mentioned, like Gen Chem and stuff. So like if you had to kind of weigh it out, was it worth it or not?
I don't know about worth it, but yeah, micro was really helpful for me. Also, cell molecular. There was a lot of cell molecular, so that was really helpful. Mm-hmm. What else? Yeah, bio is really broad, so I don't know if it's worth it. Like, I don't know. I wish I took the DAT like right after OChem, just so it was like OChem and Gen Chem were both fresh, and I had like a hard time trying to relearn everything plus study on top of my other classes. So my review kind of took longer than all of my like other stuff. So I did a long time reviewing, and then I was able to finally do practice stuff. So I don't think it's worth it.
I agree with Vanessa. It's not really worth it. It sucks. I mean, like studying for the DAT, I was taking Bio 275 at the same time, so that kind of helped. If I wasn't taking it at the same time, I probably would have had a lot more of a difficult time studying for it. But a lot of 275 is bio 171, but in more depth. So, and it doesn't really ask you too much in-depth questions 275 brings up. So mainly I would just really focus on bio 171, bio 172, Gen Chem, and OChem. Like that's it. That's all you need. Studying for the DAT though, I did see some topics in the DAT show up in microbiology, and I was like, oh, I know this, but it's better for it to be the other way around. Like, oh no, okay, no, it doesn't really matter. It's self-learning. You can learn it yourself. It's nothing too difficult. I would rather be more prepared for the DAT and not have to review everything than having some information left in your micro classes. Prioritize your DAT.
Yeah, so like my experience is I took the DAT right after my sophomore year, and so that was like right after I finished OChem. I didn't have any upper division classes in bio other than the 170 and 172, and so that was something I was concerned about too, is whether the upper division would really help me. And so there's pros and cons, and it really depends. Something to note too is that all the three of us were taking the route where we go straight into dental school, no gap year. And so I think that can kind of affect it too, because if you have a gap year and, you know, that might give you more time to take the upper division classes and study for the DT, where you might get like the benefit of both of them. In my experience, because I started studying for the DT more recently after I finished Gen Chem and OChem. So I didn't have to spend as much time studying for those, but with bio, because I didn't have those upper division classes, I felt like I did have to learn a lot more in depth and self-study some of that on my own, especially anatomy and physiology, because I didn't take that beforehand. That's one of the things, like you briefly touch on the systems in like 172, maybe the body systems, but the stuff that they're expecting you to know on the test, they want you to know in depth of the systems, or at least that's what boot camp teaches you. And so I spent a lot of time on that section, and even with all the time I put into the biology, you're still not going to be prepared for every single question that you have on the test. So there's definitely pros and cons, but I don't regret the way that I studied for it, because I used the entire summer. I did get to study a lot for it, but again, it takes a lot of work to self-study a lot of those bio topics on your own because you don't have those upper division classes. But it's doable. Like people do it all the time. And it does help you with your I personally think it does help you with like upper division classes, like 275, because I learned everything for the DAT, is pretty easy. It was a lot easier, I think, then. Yeah, but then again, like the timeline is different. So a lot of people take it during the junior and make it work. And so Alyssa and Vanessa took it during the junior, and they're applying to dental schools, and we all end up there anyways. And so yeah, I think whatever works best for your timeline. Let's see.
Okay, we are getting close on time. So I think if we could go one more question really quickly. So thank you guys so much for sharing, but going back on like your experience and like how long you took to study, what you used to study, would you guys go to change anything, or good the way it is now and what you guys did? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, so the way that I studied, like during the summer, I was studying like full time. It was over 40 hours a week, because I knew that I had to make up for a lot of, like I had to self-study a good amount of stuff, and I did want to be prepared. And honestly, I did get burnt out by the end of it. And so that's something to think of if you're using your summer. Like you have to start school in the fall, like right after. So I think I took my test on the last Friday possible, and then I started school the next Monday. And so you don't get too much of a break, but it does, the way that I did it, my timeline, I don't regret it. If anything, I maybe would have put in a little bit more break days just so I don't get burned out near the end. But the good thing is that I didn't have to worry about it closer to when I applied. And so when I applied, it could just focus more on my application. So I don't regret the way that I did mine. Just make sure to work in like more break days and personal time, I think. Yeah.
For me, I would probably just, like what I said, I would take it after I finished organic chem and take it that summer, just because it was like kind of a lot for me to do it during school. I felt really overwhelmed, and then having to do classes and then finals and then study on top, like my day was just like too much to like fit my studying in plus schoolwork. Yeah, that's the only thing I would change.
I would say the same thing too, since I was studying for it during the school year. It was very difficult, and I felt like I couldn't even do it, honestly. You definitely have to make adjustments, I would say, to use, like, some people do use winter break to study for it, but that's not enough time, unless you're a super genius, but not everyone's a super genius. Use a summer to study for it. Like, I honestly wish I took it sophomore summer, but I didn't. So now you guys know. Take a summer off. Dedicate your DAT to that, because school is not it while you're studying for DAT.
I asked Alyssa and Vanessa because they had experience studying during the school year, and so I thought it was really important for them to kind of share their experience. There's a ton of people that study during the school year, but again, like they said, it is difficult. And so if you're going to do that, because I think some people, they don't really have a choice if they do want to apply soon, and maybe it's too late for them to kind of spend a whole summer, and so there's ways around it, like they mentioned, putting aside time and stuff. But if you're young, if you're like a freshman or you have time, I think we all agree that using a summer is very helpful, or taking a gap year if you feel like you're okay with taking a gap year and you want to make the rest of your application stronger overall. But again, we took it at all different times and we're all applying during the same time, and I think we're all doing well. Yeah. But if you guys have any other questions, I guess, oh wait, I was gonna leave my email, but I don't know if Vanessa and Alyssa, you guys feel comfortable leaving your emails, but if anyone does have any questions, I think everyone should be able to see that in the chat if you send it to everyone. And there's also a pre-dental club that we're all a part of, and Alyssa and Vanessa are officers for this year, and so yeah, I strongly recommend joining the pre-dental club, because then you can always ask other pre-dentals what they did for the DAT and everything else. But if those are all the questions for today, I think that's it. So thank you so much for everyone that attended. Yes, that's a pre-dental email. So just send them an email and you guys can join the club. But don't forget to fill out the evaluation form for the session for all the people that attended. You can find it either in the chat, the post-event survey screen that will show up when you leave this event, and in your email. So a huge thank you to Alyssa and Vanessa. I really appreciate you guys spending time to be here and talk to as panelists. And thank you to everyone else that came and attended. Yeah, have a great night, everyone. Thank you for attending. Bye.